Good evening and welcome to our interview tonight with Manu Powers, candidate for County Council District
Seven.
7, right?
Mhm.
Okay. Also like to welcome our two interviewers tonight, Gabe Katz and Christine Kubat. Um, Before we get started, I'd like to share a little bit of information about HULI PAC. We are a group of grassroots community advocates volunteering our time to HULI PAC. Many of us have witnessed during oral testimonies the problem of being the minority voice, observing seated representatives voting against the āina or the majority of testifiers. The majority rule currently allows the continuation of colonial structures, corporate rule, and methods over Ike Hawaii for āina and its people to thrive. We must collectively understand the individual power we carry as Hawai'i Island residents by getting involved. Who's going to ask our first question tonight?
That would be
Christine,
me.
take it away.
Okay.
Okay. So we're going to start off easy, Manu, with a nice soft question about you, about your personal values, what has inspired you to run for office this election cycle, and can you describe your core values and how those values apply to Hawaii Island's future? So again, your inspiration and your core values.
Sure, I'm happy to. And first off, I just want to thank you, Christine, Jeff, Gabe, for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share with my community about things like my values, Christine, and to talk story with you folks at HULI PAC. I was raised in Kalapana on the east side of the island. I'm a proud graduate of Pahoa High School. And I lived a very simple life with my single mother over there. She was a jail guard at HCCC in Hilo for many, many years. And most of the time we lived on catchment and a generator. So a pretty pared down life, for lack of a better term. I mention her because she's sort of my inspiration for everything. We, in my feeling on the matter, are currently at a tipping point in our community, particularly here in District 7. Decisions are being made right now that are going to define our quality of life for the next few generations. I'm not sure that the community understands how fast things are changing, as a matter of fact. I have a unique position in all of my community engagement roles where I'm privy to all of these things that are happening, and they're happening so fast. And I have to admit that it worries me. In particular, I would consider us in the midst of a housing crisis. And affordability crisis, as we all know. We all hear these words over and over again, but that's for good reason. I think we need people at the table right now who are willing to apply native intelligence to the decision-making process, who are willing to bring their value system, a Native Hawaiian in particular, or a Kama'aina for that matter, and incorporate that value system into policy making and apply it universally across the board. We Kanaka are intricately linked to the island, right? The island health reflects our health, and our health reflects the āina health. And so I think that we need to sort of go back to that way of thinking of where there is no separation between land and people. I descend from the Trask family. So my auntie was Haunani K. Trask. My auntie is Millie Lenny Trask. And I look to them as courageous leaders within our community. I'm not sure if any of you ever saw the Landgraf portraits at the Honolulu Museum of Art, but there was a portrait there of my aunt, and playing over the speakers the whole time was her saying, we are not Americans, we will die Hawaiians. And to me, that's both a statement of the heart and of the head. The thinking behind that being that these are policy things, right? We are not Americans, we are Hawaiians. And that can sound very extreme, but I think it means we need to talk about policy, how we define policy, because that's going to impact things like Pohakuloa and Mauna Kea, et cetera.
Hmm. Well, thank you for answering, Manu. In that vein of your background and what inspired you to run for election, I saw on your website you have a long list of your previous work experiences. Can you speak to these experiences in a bit more detail and how they lend themselves to the responsibilities of a county council member?
Sure. I mean, I think my experience in small business is really applicable. I don't know if any of you have ever been to Green Flash Coffee that was on Hawai'i Drive. I built out and founded and ran Green Flash Coffee for 10 years, which really allowed me the opportunity. The best part about Green Flash Coffee, because we weren't making any money, but the best part about it was how many members of our community I met and how many relationships I formed during that time. I was also heavily involved in the tourism industry. So there was Blue Hawaiian Helicopters, where I was base manager for several years. I worked there for about 5 years. So I have extensive knowledge in the tourism industry as well. That also obviously applies to my current job, my paying job, which is the owner and operator, along with my husband and family, of Sequest Hawaii, which we've owned for about 12 years. In all of that, I've met community members, as I mentioned. I've worked with the DLNR. I've worked with the Visitors Bureau and the Hawaii Visitors and Convention Bureau. I think that those relationships are very important in Hawaii. Some people think of them as perhaps a negative, that Hawaii is so relationship based, but I think it's quite the contrary, that those relationships are a great strength, and it's community relationships that are going to get the job done and get us across the finish line for major projects like housing, like food systems, like the cesspool conversions.
Thank you. I just want to quickly, before I let Christine ask her question, I see a lot of like board member and nonprofit service listed on your website. Can you speak a bit more to those experiences as well?
Yeah, I mean, if my husband's watching right now, he's rolling his eyes going, oh yeah, let's talk about that, shall we? That's how I've spent the majority of my time. And we're very fortunate in that we have an incredible management team at Sequest, the company that we own. We've given them equity in the business, so they have a stake in what happens in the company. So that business is real pa'a, and we're very lucky in that regard. So yes, I was the chair of the King Kamehameha Day Parade for, gosh, I think that was 6 or 7 years, the Palace Committee chair at Huli Palace. I am currently the president of the Daughters of Hawaii, which is a worldwide organization. I sat on the Kekai Ala Foundation, which hosted the Brewers Festival for 30 years. I mean, I can go on and on. But, you know, a couple of them bring me great joy, like the Daughters of Hawaii. I mean, they all do, of course, and they're all community engagement, and they're all service, which is where my heart is. But there's organizations like the HULI Foundation, of which I sit on the executive committee, that has given us entry into the Environmental Funders Group, which is facilitated by the Hawaii Community Foundation. You know, we do retreats on every island. We've gone to Lahaina. Just the other day, we were in Kaneohe Bay at the fish pond. So I've had this firsthand, front row seat opportunity that not a lot of people have to engage with the people doing the hard work within our community.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you 2 questions. The first is really simple. This is just my own personal curiosity. I've never heard of Sequest. So if you could just give me like a 1 or 2 sentence of what that business is and what it does.
Gosh, that's so hard, Christine. It's, you know, it's our family passion. I'll try my very hardest, but Sequest Hawaii is a snorkeling tour company based out of Keauhou Bay. We are one of the longest running snorkeling tour companies here on the island. We're in our 37th year, so it was founded when I was 1, if hopefully you'll all buy that. And we focus on personal tours where we connect people with the resource. So we use the interpretive process to hopefully create advocates that are visiting the islands that therefore want to preserve and protect the place as well.
Okay. But my question I'm supposed to ask you on my list here.
Going back to the script.
Back to the script. You kind of already answered. It's about the most pressing social issues that the council needs to address. I think I heard you say affordability and a housing crisis. So maybe if we just, Are those the most pressing issues? Is there something else more pressing? And then what are some of the solutions you have in mind to address them?
Yeah, I mean, I think affordability touches on everything, to be honest with you. Ultimately, what I'm trying to do is keep Kanaka and Kama'aina in Hawaii. That is my goal in all of the work that I do, whether it's, making connections within the community, fostering advocates through our business, recruiting members to the Daughters of Hawaii, which hopefully I'm doing right now just by saying it. These are advocates for these places that we love, but none of it matters if no one can afford to live here. We are in the middle of a housing crisis. We are in the middle of an affordability crisis. And we've seen people forced to make very tough decisions about that. So yes, I'm going to say the answer is affordability, but that touches on so many different things, from housing to food systems to tourism, which I'm happy to drill down on any of those. But I would say yes, the answer is affordability.
We will get to the opportunity to drill down, as you mentioned, Manu. We have some affordability and housing questions specifically. So thank you for capping off the answer for now. I want to get to a specific topic quickly. So I'm a resident in District 7, and I recall the decision to turn part of Ali'i Drive into a one-way road.
Yes.
Time, effort, and money were spent on implementing that change. And after about a month of regular complaints from residents and business owners, they reverted the road back to 2 lanes. In that vein, what will you do to ensure that people's voices are heard prior to a decision like that being made that pulls from their tax contributions?
Just briefly, personally, about the one-way road, I loved it for one particular reason. I'm not speaking for the community in any respect right now, but it was the first time in my life and all the years I've been associated with the palace where I could pull up and park right in front of the palace, hustle in lei, or bring in a horse sleigh, or brochures, or foot covers, or whatever it was. So for the short time that we had it, I personally enjoyed it very much. But I understand why the community was upset. I think that the mayor was really just trying to be responsive, and he had just gotten into office, and he was really hopeful that he could make a real impact on people's lives. And that was certainly something that did in retrospect. Yes, we know that there was, yes, there was, when you elicit that strong of a response, you had an impact to whatever degree. So I think the mayor, I hate to say he learned his lesson, but I think he heard very clearly from the community that they need to be involved in the decision-making process. I can't speak to how he will do that in the future, but what I can tell you is that that's another one of the reasons I'm running for office, is that I'm having these conversations amidst all these board members and all these organizations I'm a member of, and I'm hearing these very real systemic problems, very complex problems. And it made the most sense to me to jump into the ring and say, okay, we have to be able to put our money where our mouth is. If we believe in service and we believe that we need change and we're saying there's a crisis, then we have to be willing to do something about it. So I went on a very long listening tour. I engaged with all of my mentors. I engaged with community leaders. And that's essentially always been my process. Honestly, when this is all said and done, I will have had one heck of an education, and I will cherish that forever and treasure what I've learned from our community. That, to me, is the greatest part of all of this, is listening to the community and really taking their feedback and applying it practically.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings us to affordable housing. And the new regulations in the works at both the state and county level regarding short-term vacation rentals. Hot topic.
Everybody's favorite.
We want to know, what is your view on short-term vacation rental legislation as it stands now? And what would you like to see in the future? Maybe things could get tweaked, changed. Let's hear what you think about that.
100%. Maybe things can get tweaked and changed. Yes. I mean, as a small business owner, as someone who's invested in this community, not in short-term vacation rentals, but in businesses, and organizations, I understand how this can be very painful for some people. And my heart really goes out to them. But the fact of the matter is, and I've said it multiple times, I'll continue to say it, we are in the midst of a crisis, and therefore everything is on the table as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the basic, free market model tells us that we need new inventory to drive down the prices of homes, right? That's a recent study was sponsored by the AARP, right? It said we're 64,000 units short. We're not going to get to 64,000 units anytime soon. It's a cumbersome process. It's a bureaucratic process. So what does that mean? We have to look at existing inventory. And there are organizations who are already tackling that issue, but I'll get to that in a second because I want to be more specific about your question, Christine. I do believe that we need to convert short-term vacation rentals. Perhaps not all of them, but we need to take the current legislation, drill down, make it more specific, work with real data, because we're not getting real data right now, and talk about, in particular, non-resident owned short-term vacation rentals. I think that's a real easy place to start. Pardon me, not easy, it's difficult, but I think it's a good starting point. There are, as I mentioned, organizations doing incredible work in Hawaii that I've had the opportunity to meet with. Organizations like Hawaii Investment Ready, Hawaii Community Assets is doing incredible work, right? They bought that apartment building in Hilo. I think that there are solutions on the table and that we can activate relatively quickly. We're still talking about government here. Do we ease the permitting process? Do we grandfather in existing unpermitted structures so that landowners can build more structures on their own personal property? I think that there's lots of ways in which we can tackle this issue, but we need to take a holistic approach, and we need to do it right now. Lahaina is doing some Maui, is doing some really incredibly creative things, but that was disaster driven, and we need to address our issues before the disaster strikes.
Thank you for speaking on that, Manu. Again, we have, in looking at your website, I wanted to make sure that we ask questions pertaining to your campaign focuses, since
Sure.
you mentioned them, but of course we want to drill down. So there's more questions on affordable housing to come. But for now, I want to switch topics on another of your campaign focuses, which is regenerative and responsible tourism.
Mm-hmm.
So as I said, I know one of your focuses is making tourism more sustainable and beneficial to small business owners. Do you see our economic reliance on tourism as sustainable, firstly? And how do you plan on reducing the negative impacts of tourism on our reefs, waterways, and natural lands?
So, so sorry. Pardon me, Gabe. Please
No,
continue.
actually, feel free. Go ahead, and then there's a bit of a follow-up. So again, it's sustainability of reliance on tourism and reducing negative impact of tourism on natural lands.
Sure. Thank you. And again, I apologize for interrupting you.
No worries.
I think tourism is like a deep bruise in Hawaii, right? I think we have to acknowledge the fact that it's been incredibly extractive. It's been incredibly hurtful for generations, and it has been mismanaged for generations as well. And there's a lot of agencies involved in that process, so the finger pointing becomes just pointless. But I'm in the tourism business myself, right? And I know that it's not going away. I think we all know that it's not going away. But the low visitor sentiment metric is a perfect illustration of that hurt that people feel, right? That they can't afford to live here. Meanwhile, people are coming and traipsing all over the places that they love the most, impacting the health of the reef, crowding up their roads and their restaurants, right? So I understand why it's a very tangible, very palpable thing that people experience on a daily basis here in Hawaii, But again, it's not going away. And again, this is another systemic issue, right? The system is reliant upon tourism. The TAT, the green fee, the ocean stewardship fee, these revenues are being pumped into the system. So beyond that and property taxes, how are we going to reform this system so that we're not so dependent upon tourism? There needs to be conversations, and there already are conversations going on about regenerative tourism. They have to happen congruently while we talk about moving the model that exists into a more sustainable model of tourism. There are organizations that are doing it. I like to think that Sequest is one of them. We're providing opportunities for our employees by paying, an above average wage. We're providing low interest, sometimes no interest rate loans. We're providing employee housing. So there's ways that organizations can do it. I also understand that it's a scale issue and not everybody can. But I think that we have to be willing to find that balance so that we can support a more healthy system from the reefs. I'm sorry, just an entire Ahupua'a system, really, because yes, I'm focused on reefs because we're an ocean tour company, but we know there's plenty of land tour companies as well. How do we find that balance between supporting our employees, making a living, and being good stewards of the āina? I think that there's ways to do it, and I'm more than happy to go into that in greater depth with anybody who wants to talk about it, because this is one of the more exciting things about the future of Hawaii, is that we can do this. We can take the model that New Zealand has created. We can continue to keep local families local and still create businesses that can thrive here in the āina. And I'm sorry, I know my time is up on this one, Jeff, but I'm just going to borrow one more second to say that one of the very important components of that is incorporating Native Hawaiians into the tourism industry. I think it's been very kapu for them. They're not interested in it. And so I think we have to talk about how we can involve Kupaʻaina in the tourism industry to create a more authentic experience, to create advocates, and to really explain the nuance and the singularity of this place, both ecologically and culturally. I don't feel passionate about this at all.
Clearly not. I want to add in my kind of contextualized question that I was originally going to ask, but thank you for answering the first two parts of this question. We've all kind of seen the commodification of Hawaii, and a specific example is the use of Hawaii branding for products that are not manufactured or otherwise created by Kama'aina or Kanaka here on the islands. And so as a result, we see a lot of profits that could be brought in by local businesses or individuals instead sent to megacorps and large corporations. So my contextualized question for you is, in what illicit ways will you support small businesses to incentivize tourists to shop local, as opposed to the retail stores that often come in undercutting their prices and again with Hawaii branded products not manufactured in Hawaii?
Sure. I think we're missing a lot of opportunities in pre-arrival as it is. I think there's so many ways in which we can engage with people before they even get to the island, let alone once they're on the island. I think that, what you mentioned, the first part of your question, is a cultural appropriation, right? And so that's never going to feel good to any of us. So how do we communicate to not just tourists, but also to local people about the importance of investing in small business in Hawaii, about the importance of spending their dollars here. But as we know, that can sometimes be cost prohibitive. So I think what we need to do is invest in programs that support those organizations who are doing that work for us already, right? Whether it's a local farm, a food hub, a local grocer, a tour company. And again, there's so many examples of that. It's just the other ones that get the attention. I think that really engaging through education is probably the best way to do that. And like I said, there's plenty of missed opportunities already.
Thank you for entertaining my long-winded question.
I actually love the idea and would love to talk further about it offline. Okay.
Sure. Sounds good.
Okay, so anybody who knows me is out there like, when is she going to ask about this? Here it
Recycling?
comes. Waste, sustainable materials management.
Yes.
Sustainable materials management, of which recycling can be a part of that. But here we go. So managing materials, discarded materials, we try not to use the word waste, is a core function of county government. Listening to you so far, it seems like you're pretty well versed in how things work here. So I don't know if you've been tracking the history of our county when it comes to managing discarded materials, but let's be nice and say there's a lot of room for improvement.
Yes.
So what kind of improvements would you make on the system? And When it comes to our waste stream, are there any particular components of that waste stream that you feel could be better managed by the County Department of Environmental Management?
Yeah, I think you were being generous, Christine, to say that, there's room for opportunity in there, room for growth or improvement, excuse me. And I have to admit, it's hard to answer this question to you, who is essentially the guru on, this particular subject matter. So I would love to hear your opinion, but I know that's not why we're here. My feeling on the matter is that we need to start at the very beginning, and we need to talk about what's actually going into the landfill, because that's essentially the definition of management at this point, right? The amount and the sheer volume of waste that we're generating and how we're managing it, obviously we all acknowledge is an issue, and it's one that's coming to a head. I think we're on the clock and we're running out of time. I think we need to talk about how larger producers of waste are managing their waste, right? Are we incentivizing hotels to minimize their waste? Are we applying costs to hotels, schools, hospitals? I understand hospitals is a different story, but how are we incentivizing people to minimize waste? I think that we have to start cutting it off at the pass from the very beginning. And we need to talk about this in scale too. So as individual homeowners, how are we managing waste in our own home, right? Not everybody is quite as well versed in waste management as, say, you are. And so they don't even think about it, right? It's like magic. They put it in the bag, they take it to the dump, or they take it to the curb, and it just disappears. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity where education is concerned to really inform people on how the system works. I know this is, where you live and breathe, Christine, but I'm not sure that the average person really understands what's happening with our waste system, what's happening with our landfills in Hilo and in Kona, and what they can do, what tools they have available to them to minimize their impact on the system. I think education is where we need to start, so that we're minimizing what's going in to these systems. And again, talking about incentives with larger producers.
Okay, I'll let that sit, and Gabe, take it away.
Sure. So sorry to pivot again, but it's back to our favorite topic of affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
We're all aware Hawai'i Island's population is increasing year over year, and we continue to see home prices increase disproportionately. You mentioned in an earlier response about 64,000 units as a potential addressal of this issue as a means of increasing housing availability. So I want to ask you a bit more about that. Do you see urban development as a means to counteract the housing crisis? How does that intermesh with preserving natural lands? And additionally, what should be done to protect available housing from wealthy bad actors from purchasing entire subdivisions or large plots and then renting out for egregious prices?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in support of urban density, to be honest. I think that we're running out of options. I mean, 95% of our land is, unfit for housing development. And we certainly don't want to cut into agricultural lands, right? I think that we're right on the cusp of something really big in Hawaii County, in particular in District 6 and 7, where food systems are concerned. There's some really interesting and exciting work happening, say, at the Ulu Cooperative, at Adaptations, who are supporting these farmers, the whole system along the way, administratively, distribution, storage, all of these things. And so I think it's important to continue to support them and not cut into the ag lands. Therefore, right through the process of elimination, now we're talking about urban centers, right? We're talking about these places that are already zoned for residential housing. So I think we need to talk about, and it's already happening, right? Smaller lot sizes, parking limitations. All of these things have to be factored in, and we need some real common sense practices in order to create more inventory. So I'm in support of urban density. And I'm so sorry, Gabe, what was the second part of your question?
I had asked about the preservation of natural lands, which it sounds like you're saying don't mess with ag lands as far as residential construction goes.
Right.
But the last part of my question was, what should or can be done to protect available housing from bad actors purchasing entire subdivisions for profit?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great question. I think we need to apply some parameters to who's purchasing at this point. I think we've gotten to the point where we need to create policy surrounding who's purchasing what. And I think that's reflected in the short-term vacation rental issue as well, right? Let's say you have a generational home. Your grandparents owned it, your tutu owned it, your papa owned it, your mother's still living there with you, you're her caretaker. This is a very common thing right here in Hawaii. And you have a home that was perhaps $200,000 in value, maybe 10 years ago, and now it's $1.5 million. This is a pretty common theme, right? How is a family like that supposed to pay their property taxes when it wasn't their fault that outside investors came in and purchased the homes around them for cash over market price, drove up the value, right? If we're talking about people who live in Hawaii, who are contributing to the economy through their spending, right? Again, at a grocery store, at a farmer's market, through the utility system, then if they're paying the market price, it's a different story than someone coming in, buying it as a second home. So I think we need to look at non-resident second homes and whether or not they're going to be primary residences as a potential method of, or excuse me, an approach to solve that particular issue.
Thank you for addressing it. Again, another long-winded question, but
I'm sorry.
These are convoluted topics, so I appreciate it.
It's so complex, right? It's incredibly complex, and that can be off-putting for a lot of people. But I don't think we have the luxury of not facing it head-on at this point any longer.
Yeah, and I want to highlight part of our intent here as part of this interview and as a PAC is to not get the political answer. We want to hear your thoughts, both as an individual and as a candidate, on these issues, and just have it be voiced clearly for the people, because at the end of the day, you're a person first, a candidate second. People want to see your humanity and understand, what your perspective is on these issues. So again, thank you for addressing and speaking on this stuff.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
Of course. Christine, I'll pass it back to you.
Okay, here we go. Let's talk climate.
Okay.
How do you feel climate change is impacting your district, and what mitigation measures can you propose to deal with it?
So climate change is obviously impacting our district, which we just saw in the last couple of Kona lows, right? Mm-hmm. I sit on the Mayor's Flood Mitigation Task Force, and I had the opportunity to tour Kona High School, the Greenwell Farm, with the mayor and the governor a couple of weeks ago, and I was floored by the volume of water that moved through that system. More than anything else, it was the debris that was carried down the hill that created all the damage, right, and really tore through the systems. So climate change is impacting my district in so many ways, from the reef system, right, from water health and reef health, to floods, to fire, you name it. I also before I lived in District 7, I lived in District 8 in Holualoa, and in a area called Keopumauka. And I'm not sure if you've ever been there, but the kupuna tell us that it is the rainiest part of Kona. And boy, was it ever. And luckily, our family really enjoys the rain, but to see the sheer amount of water that was moving through that subdivision that was coming directly from the Hono'ula Forest Reserve, directly Mauka, was terrifying. And in 1984, there was substantial damage in that area, and the subdivision on the Makai side of the road responded with a really robust plan and engineered system to handle that amount of water. So did the subdivision on the Mauka side, yet still we've seen incredible damage even after the system was over-engineered theoretically. So we're going to continue to see storms like this. And again, I'm going to reference the Ahupua'a system, right? So when we're talking about climate change in Hawaii in particular, we're talking about a system being impacted from Mauka to Makai. And so we need to better understand how we can mitigate that damage. I think we're we're past the prevention phase. We're well into mitigation at this point. How do we ensure that everyone is going to be safe? Because I think we got really, really lucky across the state after those last Kona lows. I think it's a miracle that no one was hurt in in Oahu. And I think we got very lucky here in Kona that no one was hurt here. One of the things that struck me during that tour was that access was cut off, right? The Kona Hospital is right there. And if you were, say, just to the south of Greenwell Farms, just to the north of Greenwell Farms, you couldn't get to the Kona Hospital at that point. You were cut off from services. You'd have to go to Waimea, or hopefully there would be an urgent care open, but certainly not on that day. So I think we're talking about impacts on the much larger scale, like reef health, but we're also talking about real world issues during these events. And that haven't even begun to talk about fire yet, right? And we know very well how fire can impact a community now. Unfortunately, we learned the hard way.
Okay, so I'm going to cash in some of my extra length on questioning at this point, because I feel like you were very responsive in terms of describing how climate change is impacting the district. But there was a second part to the question, and that was, what mitigation measures can you propose to deal with it? And it's okay for you to say, you don't know at this point, or that's something that you would explore. But we do want to give you the chance to share any ideas you have, or at least let us know what your approach would be.
Yeah, apparently I have an aversion to that second part of the question, and when my time's up, I want to be respectful of your time as well. So I apologize, Christine. I think that there's things that we can do, and I think the first thing we need to do is start with data. Of course, oh gosh, this is such a broad question, right? There's things that we can do in our own homes as individuals, right? There's things that we can do where organizations are concerned and where larger businesses are concerned on the island, right? Where we can, put in a waste management, make it mandatory for these organizations to have waste management plans, right? Or make it mandatory, make enforcement mandatory. That's another thing, right? The DLNR is woefully understaffed and really needs more enforcement officers to really assist in, say, reef health and land use practices, right? And so I think that what we can do is we can start with enforcement. We can start with education. We can add enforcement in, and we need data for all of that. So for instance, the last study that was done was in 1984 and on floods in District 7. And so we need new data to support getting funding from both the state and, let's say, county, state, and at the federal level, because we know that this is going to cost a lot of money to make these communities fire safe, flood safe. And we also need to partner with organizations within the community that are already doing this work, right? Organizations and community management groups that are already partnering with the state and with the county. There's so many models of that within Hawaii, where the work is being done by individuals, by kupa āina who have that place knowledge, who can share it with the community, and who can get funding from the county or the state or the federal level to implement, practices, in particular Native Hawaiian practices that worked for centuries before we came in and messed it all up.
Do you have any specific ideas on how to handle waste management? It's such a serious problem. I'm just curious as to whether, and everyone's kicking around so many ideas.
I know, you're right, Jeff. Specifically waste management, are you talking about solid
landfill
waste?
Yeah, solid waste.
Yeah, I would defer to Christine on this. I would meet with Christine and ask her what she could tell me about what she's been spending, all of her time on for, 20 years, Christine? But I think we need to start talking about the major producers and how they are contributing to the system and how they're abusing the system. I'll go so far as to say through taxes, tax incentives. But I'd be interested in talking to community about what happens in the next steps, right? I'm certainly not a waste management specialist, which is such an interesting thing about council, right? It's such a broad purview. You can't be expected to really have a deep understanding of each of these issues. Some of them, of course, more so than others, like tourism, like cultural preservation. Those things fall under my job description currently and have for decades, but not waste management. So I'm so fortunate that I live in a community that has a Christine Kubat in it who I can call and say, Christine, please tell me what I need to do at the county level in order to make real change, because I do understand the problem very well, right? I understand that we're approaching a deadline that is making everyone very uncomfortable. And there's no real solutions on the table, that at least that I know of, that are currently being applied. So I would, again, like I normally do, rely on community and community experts.
Thank you.
On that note of working with community, so you mentioned working directly in your community, deferring to experts, and your individual kuleana to your fellow people. However, as a prospective county council member, you will be joining a network of people. It won't just be you in a vacuum. You'll be contextualized with your fellow prospective council seat members. So in that vein, what steps would you take to make the county budget and prospective expenditure easier for residents to understand and monitor? And again, I'll highlight the change to a e-drive. It sounds like that was a decision by the mayor, but similar decisions about the county budget. How would you ensure transparency and the words of the people be considered in budgeting appropriately?
Yeah, I think that a lot of that it's a two-way street. I think that not everyone is a weirdo like me who really thrives on watching county council meetings for fun or has for years and just really enjoys the process of policy and government. So I think that the mayor's, a perfect example of this is the mayor's weekly addresses, utilizing social media to educate the community. I actually really enjoy those, and I think they've been incredibly effective, right? But again, two-way street. He also needs to be listening. So there's transparency from government, but there's also community engagement. I have learned more when I'm in place and with the people who know the place than I ever have anywhere else, right? So when I visit a site and I'm engaging with the people who steward it, I'm learning both in the micro and the macro in that moment. And so I think that engaging with the mayor, engaging with the administration, engaging with the county council is incredibly important. And we've been to meetings where, if there's a hot button issue like, SDVRs, the seats are filled, but on any given day, there's not a lot of people in those seats. So how do we get people to engage in the process to really understand how it impacts their life? And I think that you need to draw that thread more clearly. I think a perfect example of that is tourism, right? I don't think a lot of people really understand how much money is generated directly into the budget via tourism, right? They might feel very differently about tourism if they knew where that money was going, how that revenue was generated, and then where it was going. So I think that you have to draw those lines between the practice and the actual application of it for the community. Again, not everybody's doing that. Not everyone's engaging. And again, I think that's because they just don't understand how it impacts them.
How would you, I guess, hold your the co-members of the council's feet to the fire in an explicit way?
I think that there's, ways in which you can get people to engage with community. There's no, it's a democracy, right? That council is a democracy. I think that my deep connection to every corner of this island helps with communication with other individuals from other districts. Yes, I'm running for District 7. I'm from Puna, as I mentioned. My mother was a fisherwoman, and so we spent all of our time camping in every corner of this island, from Kohala to Kalai to Mahukona, right? We know every inch of this place, and those are some of my most cherished memories. Having that relationship with land so that I can better communicate with the other individuals and sharing with them my experience about engaging with community, creating opportunities to engage with community, and really helping them understand that that process is beneficial to everyone. People feel like they're heard at that point. They are heard. That knowledge is then transferred to the county council member and hopefully applied in practice. And none of us live in a vacuum. This isn't a siloed process. This is, it's a democracy.
Yep. Thank you. I know, like anecdotally, people can see the history of your career and get a sense for, your personal accountability. But in general, at least I've witnessed in my time as a voter, accountability is a huge issue in politics, and people will elect representatives and then there is no accountability. So part of the consideration is not only you as a candidate, but you joining a network, as I mentioned, having that accountability and knowing that you will represent the people's voices is just, it's a hot button issue. So
I can completely understand, as it should be. I understand completely. Yeah.
So just want to leave that footnote there for people to consider that, yes, we're interviewing you as a candidate, but this is, again, contextualized in the network that you'll be joining as a prospective member. So
yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm just going to add to that real quick, Gabe. I mean, this is all about community. This is all about community service. And so every bit of this is based in community, is meant to serve community. This isn't for any other reason other than to hope that this place is preserved for my children and for their children, and that my family, whose lineage is from Hawaii, continues to be rooted here in place.
Thank you.
And Christine.
One more. Yay, I'm glad I got to ask another question. Okay, so we just hit you with one problem after the next. What are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about that? Climate, waste, boom, boom, boom. And part of my experience living on this island, why I love living on Hawai'i Island so much, is I feel like I'm in the company of people that are doing amazing things. I'm really inspired. I come back. I have a friend that does this amazing thing. I have another friend that does this other amazing thing. And when I hear you talking about the connections you have island-wide, I guess I'm supposed to ask you questions about your district, but never mind. I'm going to ask you island-wide. And you don't have to give the person's name or the business name, but kind of following on to that experience that I just shared, what is your experience of people on our island who are engaged in things that are already solutions in the making, out there, making it happen? Share your observations about that.
How much time do you have? I mean, that's
2 minutes. Go, girl.
I mean, I mentioned early on that my engagement with the Environmental Funders Group through the HULI Foundation, of which I sit on the executive committee, has been some of the most rewarding work of my life. There are incredible organizations and incredibly passionate people doing incredible work here on the island. I've got no problem calling people out. I mean, I already mentioned, the Dadas at Adaptations who are doing outstanding work supporting farmers and really helping rewrite policy in the process, right? Donna Shapiro at the Ulu Co-op, who is just mind-blowingly brilliant. And we should all be investing in that system because it's, she's now reaching institutions, right? Schools and hospitals, right? And so you're talking about children eating food that was just grown down the street from them. And in the process, a farmer made a profit. He was able to store his food there. Donna supported him in giving him support administratively, in distributing for him, in packaging and labeling for him. These are huge things for your average farmer in South Kona, right? Then let's talk about Kahalu'ukuahewa, right? The ohana that's running the Kamehameha School's leased parcel up above Donkey Mill Road. They have a parcel of land that they cleared by hand, which was all, invasive species. They're taking it in a section by section, and they're experimenting with native plants there, right? In the process, they're bringing in school groups. They're teaching them Olelo Hawaii in the process. They're teaching them traditional farming techniques, and they're feeding people in the process. I can go on and on all day. I'm in my 6th year. I think it's my 6th year with the HULI Foundation. We're in the spend down process. So we're giving away We're deploying substantial grants out into the community, into these organizations that we go visit, we listen and we learn from, and there are some incredibly innovative ideas coming out of these people and these places, ranging from food systems to cesspools, right? And Hawaii Investment Ready, that's, that one alone is mind-blowing. They're shifting the narrative within the community, within the philanthropic community, within the NGO community, and they're making people have conversations, or they're facilitating conversations that are really changing the mindset of the people in Hawaii who are working in these fields. And people are realizing there's real opportunity here. We can do all of these things. We can make this place more affordable. We can feed local families. We can, have sustainable practices. We can be āina focused. We can be ahupua'a system focused throughout all of this. There are ways to do this. So that network that you referenced, Christine, it's the most exciting thing for me. Engaging with community, learning from people, it's endless. The opportunities are endless. And that is something that, back to your question, Gabe, I would advocate for at the county council level to say, we have to listen to the community. They're the ones out there doing the work. They're the ones who are showing up at their farm every day, at their business every day. And there's solutions on the table already. We just need to invest in them. Again, not passionate about this at all.
Well, unfortunately, we are out of time. Mahalo, Manu Powers, candidate for County Council District 7. Really enjoyed speaking to you tonight, and we thank you for your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, you're absolutely welcome. Thank you to both our interviewers, Gabe Katz and Christine Kubat. And if I might get on my high horse, the one thing I'd like to urge everybody to do is be informed and vote. Don't miss your opportunity to vote. Talk to your friends and family about all the issues on Hawai'i Island, and then make sure you go to the polls and vote. A little 100%. More information about HULI PAC is HULI PAC was born from a shared drive to rework our system by seeking indigenously progressive-minded, āina-based, equity-focused leadership for our Hawai'i Island community. Now more than ever, we need leaders who are willing to circle back to our roots and instill real change to regenerate and transform our Hawai'i Island community. For more information, please check out our website, hulihi.com. That's HULIHI.com. Thanks again, and everybody have a great evening.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Manu.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Thank you all. Have a good night.
At HULI PAC, we envision a future in which our Hawai'i Island community is empowered to elect pono leaders, nurture our relationship with āina, and inspire environmental, social, and economic well-being.
Our mission is to endorse and support candidates and office holders of integrity who serve āina and the people of Hawai'i Island. We do this by interviewing, researching, and ultimately vetting candidates and incumbents who are running for local office.
All of our interviews are streamed live so that you have the power to make decisions off of substance rather than a familiar face or a name. We must move forward and encourage voting based on righteous qualifications and a backbone to stand up for what is pono.